Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. Today's a little bit different. I have Chad Franson of Rise 25, who's done hundreds of interviews with successful entrepreneurs, investors, and CEOs, and we've flipped the script a bit, and Chad is going to be interviewing me. Chad, take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. I appreciate the chance to talk to you. Before we get started, I'll let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, they are a full-service property management company helping their clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. They help their clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. That's why no matter what rental you have, single-family homes, condos, townhomes, apartments, they have the management solutions you need. Go to KeyrenterPMC.com for more details. You can also email them at info@KeyrenterPMC.com. Hey, Matt, tell me a little bit more about Keyrenter Property Management, just kind of where you guys are located, what you guys do, everything like
absolutely. Keyrenter Property Management is located in 3 markets. We're in Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Northwest Arkansas, which includes all of the metropolitan statistical areas of those markets. We help our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets, as you just said, and that really means we help our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. There's no project that's too big or too small, as long as it's in the single family or multifamily residential space.
And you're one of the founders of the company?
So Keyrenter is actually a franchise. We own Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Northwest Arkansas.
Okay. What made you decide to get involved?
Oh man, years ago, I was living in Dubai, and at the time, I wasn't paying that much tax. There's a foreign earned income exclusion, and your first like $40,000 or $50,000, or so your first 150 of 1,000 of taxable income is actually, I guess, forgiven. They just don't have tax on that. Above that, of course, you pay tax. So I was saving, $30,000 or $40,000 a year and not paying tax. And I sent a book home when I went to visit my grandparents one year. I sent a book to their house about real estate investing. And my sister, of course, being my sister, opened my Amazon package. And she, when I got to the house, said to me, "Oh, you've been thinking about investing in real estate. So have I." So she at the time, and still is, living in Boulder, Colorado. And we started buying properties in Boulder. And that was great. At the time, they were a little bit cheaper than they are now. So we started buying properties there. Rent was great, easy to fill the houses. And my sister was managing those properties. When I moved to Tulsa some years later to marry my wife, or actually, I should say I moved to Tulsa and I married my wife, but her family's from Tulsa. I started buying properties also and realized that it was a totally different beast. I was buying properties that needed a ton of work, that, were multifamily. Rents were at $350, and I needed to bump them up to $550. But the demographic of tenant that lives in a house that rents for, or a duplex unit that rents for $350 is totally different than the demographic of somebody that's in Boulder and paying $4,000 or $4,500 a month for rent. I just couldn't expect that the money would be deposited into my account. So I started looking around for management companies that could do it. Realized I wasn't happy with any of the solutions, and then found Keyrenter when I decided that I was going to do it myself and needed a system to actually handle the management. So fast forward, I started realizing that there was a dearth of management solutions in the market. Started talking to investors, picked up my first couple of rentals, started marketing, and then here we are today with 2,500 rental units under management.
I think a lot of people would be interested in buying property and renting it out, but the scariest thing is having to manage the property. What's the reason why people choose you, and what's the biggest benefit and uniqueness about working with you guys?
Oh my God. I mean, management is really a headache. It is a ton of very small things that happen on a repeat basis. I think starting from the acquisition, most of the time people don't know what they should buy. And if they go to a regular realtor, oftentimes the realtor is interested in just clipping a coupon. Not everybody is. Some people are clearly interested in long-term relationships. And if the property doesn't work, then they don't get to continue that relationship. Many times a realtor's going, "Hey, I've got a client. I need to find them something. Let me find them something. And I'll just promise them whatever rents, I need to make the deal work." Then they come to us and we say, "Well, it's going to rent for $200 less." And they say, "Well, my realtor told me it was going to rent for $1,700. We say, "Well, here's the market. Here are all the comps. We can list it at $1,700, but everybody in the market's already looking at stuff that's next door for $1,500. So it's probably going to rent for $1,500. You want to start at $1,700, no problem, but it's probably going to end up at $1,500 or $1,550. And so starting from that point where you're just looking to acquire real estate, we can help. we have rental comps. We've got, with 1,600 doors in Tulsa, for example, we have probably something in a similar neighborhood, if not next door. So starting from there, then, putting a tenant in, there are 20 steps that go into putting a good quality resident in. Not only do you have to clean the property, make sure it's in show condition, hang a lockbox, put it onto Zillow, which involves taking photos, writing a description, getting everything put together, getting it uploaded to Zillow and all the other portals. Then you have to show the property, right? You have to take the leads that come from Zillow or any other platform or portal and actually put them through the house. Then you have to collect information, get an application. You have to screen the application. Who's doing the screening? How do you know that their social security number matches up to their actual name? On and on and on. I can keep going, but in essence, that's the first little bit before you actually even get to the point where you approve them and sign a lease. So there's a million moving parts.
Would you recommend then that like a potential, somebody looking for an investment property, to rent out, come to you before they even make the purchase?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to provide advice at any stage, or share our experience, I should say, at any stage of the process. And if that means you have something under contract, let us, take a look at it and share with you what we think it will rent for. I'm happy to walk properties, and our team's happy to walk properties before they actually, the deed transfers, so that we can give an opinion about what sort of work needs to get done to make it rent ready, et cetera. Sometimes we have people come to us and they share an inspection report. The inspection report will tell whether the roof needs to be replaced and whether the HVAC system is too old and is not cooling, whether the hot water heater needs to be replaced, but it won't tell you necessarily that the walls are, in not rentable condition. So it's really important that we see the property and that we're able to provide an opinion about what needs to happen for the property to actually be rent ready, because that's not done in the inspection report.
Is there something about you guys that kind of makes you different from maybe other property management companies out there?
Yeah, I mean, we call ourselves the Same Day Property Management Company. That's why this podcast is called the Same Day Podcast. We focus on high touch communication. We want an owner to be updated every step along the way as as a property flows through the process from being onboarded to being leased and then being renewed the next year. So we communicate a lot, and we're happy to do that until our owners go, okay, I trust you. No problem. You don't have to communicate as much, and then we might scale it back. But in essence, the property management industry has had a bad rap for a long time. Some of our owners think that, we make up work orders as if we don't have enough stuff to do and we're sending out vendors unnecessarily. And so we want to make sure that when we get a work order from a tenant, whether that says, the latch on my toilet doesn't work, and I say, hey, to that tenant, I say, hey, by the way, go to Home Depot, buy one for $6, and here's a YouTube on how to replace it. That's not something that we're going to send out a maintenance tech for $65 or a plumber for $90 to fix. You have to do it. But I want to make sure that the owner knows every time a work order comes in, that work order came in, and they can provide feedback if they don't think it's something worth doing. So there are differences in opinions and philosophies about who is responsible for what in terms of maintenance on a house. At my properties, I own 50 or 60 properties. At my homes, I do quarterly pest control because I don't think, even the best of tenants may not do pest control. And I want to make sure that the problem doesn't get out of hand, such that I have to, have a much more heavy touch solution down the road. So I do pest control at my properties. Our lease says that pest control after the first 7 days is on the tenant. So why do I do it? It's a philosophy. Not all of our owners want to do it. Some of them are a little more cash conscious. And so if a tenant submits a work order for pest control, we might naturally tell them, hey, it's in your lease that you do it. So, get it done. But we might also, for something like, as simple as an example of the fourth burner on the stove doesn't work, I would fix it if it were my property. But if an owner says that burner hasn't worked in 6 years and it never bothered me, let the tenant deal with it, I'd say, okay, I'm willing to accept that as a solution. Please know that, they might not accept a rent increase as readily. They may feel like we're not taking good care of them, but that's an option. As long as you know your options, I'm working as an intermediary. I'm working on your behalf, and I'll handle that, the way you want it to be handled. But so we make sure that our communication is top notch, and that we bring the owner along every step of the journey, as long as they want to be involved. If they don't respond to us, we accept that. We're not the center of the universe. And some owners want to be purely passive. We go, cool, no problem. We'll fix it the way we would want it to be fixed if it were our property. But in so much as you have the opportunity, you then have the choice. Do you want to respond and let us know how you want to do it? Or do you want to just let us run with it? So I think that differentiates us. One is communication. Two is we will literally do anything related to the property. You want us to tear it down and rebuild it? We will do that. We've got a contractor on the team, Seth Rice, I've mentioned a couple of times on the podcast. He's a fantastic general contractor, was an unlimited journeyman electrician in his previous life. And so he knows contracting really, really well. We've got all the vendors that will do anything from, basic painting and make ready stuff to we want to take it down to the studs and rewire all the electrical, put in new HVAC, all new plumbing, service lines, water and gas and plumbing lines into the property. we'll do it all. We don't shy away from any sort of contracting work. And many companies, don't do that much work because there's a liability associated with that. We're willing to accept that, and we want to do the work.
What would you say is most surprising? Is that like a common thing that is really surprising to people who, are excited about this property that they're ready to put up for rent?
The most common thing we're seeing in this market now, with interest rates bumping up 3/4 of a point, it might actually change. But I think people have been surprised that we've been able to get more rent than they ever expected, right? We sometimes put things up and just hope that we get a quick bite on a popped rent, on rent that's $75, $100, $200 more than we were expecting. And so people have been really surprised that properties have rented for a lot more than they were expecting. But in a traditional sense, when we're outside of the crazy COVID market from years before, and I suspect what we're going to enter now being the 21st or 2nd of June, I don't even know, but I suspect we're coming into a slower market. Rent rates will come down just a little bit, or they won't at least pop as much as they have been over the last 2 years. And people are a little bit shocked by certainly how much things cost these days. So, an HVAC system that was formerly $5,000 or $6,000 is now $9,000. Things are just, the prices have gone up in such an incredible way, and it's hard for us to do anything about it. If you want a 2x4 right now, it's 4 or 5, 6 times what it was 2 years ago. A sheet of OSB at $75 or $80 was formerly $12. That's a global supply chain shortage. It's just, there's an inability to get stuff. Price gouging, I'm sure, forms some part of that. But it's, I think one thing that shocks owners is how much prices have gone up from basic materials and labor over the past 2 years.
You said you got involved in this because you couldn't find somebody who you were satisfied with to help you with that. Have you always had this kind of like problem solving spirit where you're just going to start something because you're frustrated over not being able to find it?
I don't know if I've always had it, but certainly, when I worked at McKinsey, I was a consultant at McKinsey in the Middle East in the Dubai office, and there's a huge emphasis placed on problem solving. It's like nobody else is going to solve this for you. The buck stops with you. Figure it out. And so there were times when we were, working for various companies, and the solution was fly to a different country, go to a retail outlet for that company, and figure out what is causing declining sales. And I would do that. I might be in a suit walking around Riyadh in Saudi Arabia in 110-degree heat, wandering into the Cartier shop or something like that, something crazy at a mall. And it was just find the problems. And so I think born out of that experience, I became a better problem solver. And then stepping into the entrepreneurial journey, we've had a huge emphasis on just improving things, right? I don't want to solve the same problem over and over. So let's find a great solution to a problem once, and then implement that solution across the business.
How did you kind of get things started then? Like, you decided to do this. How did you end up kind of get things started? And what were your first few clients like?
Yeah. So, at the beginning, I was doing everything, right? I was taking photos. I was doing inspections. I was listing them online. I was doing the showings. I was doing everything. And as our team built, now we're almost a team of 80 people. But as our team grew, I was able to parse out things, and people were able to go deeper in their expertise. So I remember early on, I had a colleague, Michael, and we had rented a property, and Michael got a phone call when the tenants moved in, and they were like, "Hey, there's a Lexus in the garage." And I was like, "Oh, that's a shocker. I guess I never walked into the garage when I did photos or when I did, the inspection or whatever else. I guess I was doing kind of a light touch inspection." So another example of that was, we'd lease properties in winter, and then there'd be some issue where the tenant moves in and can't get heat turned on because there's no gas line or the meter is removed, and we just didn't notice it. Right. And so hiring our first maintenance inspectors that would go through and do like 100-point inspection. They go into AppFolio, our software, and they just do a full inspection. They check whether electrical sockets are working. They check whether gas is on. They check whether the heat will function, the AC will function, et cetera, et cetera. It was a huge turning point in our ability to, service our tenants really well. And the problem with any small issue is that it blows up. Obviously, I'm not saying anything new here, but it blows up in your face, and it stops you. As you deal with that emergency, it stops your ability to handle other residents and provide everybody with quality service. So in the event that you don't have heat in winter, for example, the tenant is calling you every 5 minutes. You're calling the plumber. You're trying to get a solution while you're calling the plumber, and while the tenant's calling you to yell at you, you missed 3 other phone calls from other people that might be just trying to do relatively innocuous things. They're calling to schedule a viewing. They're calling to check whether you received the rent check that they paid, whatever it is. But now, instead of being able to handle those with a 1-minute phone call, you've got the missed call, the voicemail, you've got to call them back. You miss them, then they call you. Then so it's just it turns a 1 minute exercise into a 5-minute exercise. Multiply that by the hundreds of things that we do every day, and we get probably 150 calls on our main line every day. That now obviously we don't deal with individually. We've got people. There are people in the business that handle those phone calls specifically. But if you can just solve the problem on the front end, in this case, by having a maintenance inspector go through and identify everything that's wrong with the property so we can get it solved before somebody moves in, everybody has a better experience. And that means the tenant is from the start has much more a feeling of goodwill towards Keyrenter, and as a result towards the owner, and will accept rent increases, will likely sign their lease for renewal, et cetera.
So who do you guys serve everywhere? Anyone from, one person who has a house they want to rent to people who own major complexes?
Totally. So our largest clients, might have 95 homes. They might have 100 unit complex plus, a 10 unit plus 25 single families. Literally from the smallest person to the largest institutional investor. We've got tons of people, tons of institutional investor clients that add 5 or 10 or 15, sometimes 20 properties a month. And, then they've got to be renovated. They've got to be, sometimes we do cash for keys. It literally runs the gamut. We handle anybody that has a single family or multifamily residential or 100 we're willing to handle.
Okay. Sounds good. Hey, tell me about this podcast. Why are you starting it?
Yeah. So, now that we're an organization of 75 or 80 people, it becomes really important that my voice as the founder, as the visionary of the business, can cascade down through various, levels of the organization. It's important that people understand kind of how things started, like this conversation, why we started things, how things start. And we do that in an annual meeting where we get everybody together in one room and kind of tell our origin story, talk about our core values, give core value awards, et cetera. But it's also really important that some of the minutia, the details of why we started things, how we've made progress, our core value of improve it, the little things that we've improved over time get communicated down through various levels of the organization. In addition to that, our sales team, is fantastic. They do a great job, but, they don't have necessarily all of the background, all of the history as to why we do things. They don't have some of the hero stories that we have, that I have, and when I used to do sales, I could reach back into the memory bank and talk about some of our original client experiences, original tenant experiences, and explain how something today that we do was a result of a problem that we solved years ago. So I want to make sure that we've got both evergreen content for potential clients for the future, and also that our internal team has content that they can share with owners and understands the origin story of this business. And, fundamentally, this is the best way for me to, create leverage. I can't be everywhere at all times. I can't be in all of our markets. And as we grow to new markets, as we expect to do over the next, 18 or 24 months, I want to make sure that some of the hero stories are captured for posterity.
So who do you think the show is best for?
I think we're recording a lot of different episodes for different people. There are great stories of entrepreneurs and the fundamental, the hustle muscle that it takes to push down barriers and boundaries and borders and be an entrepreneur. There's tons of content that we're going to produce, if we haven't already, for individual owners that want to understand how we do stuff, like how we do an eviction and what the timeline is. And that's, core process of what we do, how we do leasing, what websites we syndicate to, how we generated our lease, and why it's, a very extensive, long lease. It's fairly favored towards the landlord, us in this scenario, and protecting our owners. There's tons of content that will be relevant for various people, right? People in the Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Northwest Arkansas communities that are just interested in local business, because we're interviewing a lot of different business owners, entrepreneurs, and then people that are interested in how property management works.
Okay. Hey, sounds great. I will look forward to hearing future episodes. Hey, I really appreciate you giving me the chance to talk to you today. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.